Hi folks, and welcome to Ironwood. Today we're going to be making an awl. This is a sort of awl. It's a spike and it just punches holes in things. But it's a tool that everybody should have and really need, because it's an old tool in terms of usage going back over the years. 7,500 years ago actually, one was found in an Egyptian sarcophagus. So we're going to use a piece of hardwood, African hardwood. It's called pah-dook. And it's a very red, as you can see the grain is beautiful and red, and that will come up really nice when we've done it and polished it all up. And then for the pointy bit we're going to use an old drill bit. We're going to sand it down to a point. The fluting in the drill bit will make the point look really nice, and it won't look like a drill bit once we've finished. And we're going to use a copper ferrule. So we'll use a piece of copper tubing. It's from an old water pipe as a ferrule. That's a ferrule. So it comes in and it just stops the handle from splitting. So when you put whatever you're putting in, stops the wood from, so when you're pushing it one way, it stops it from splitting. Copper is brilliant because it's soft and easy to use. And a little bit of, oh yeah, hang on a minute. A little bit of copper wire. And we're going to do something quite magical with this, so stay tuned. The first job is to cut the pah-dook into a manageable size and shape. This is only a small piece to start with, but we still don't need it all. Sorted. Hopefully that'll mount to the lathe now. Now I'm going to use the lathe to bring the piece down to the sort of size and shape that I'm after. I want a conical shape, something that fits nicely in the hand. As you can see, this pah-dook is really dense and really hard. If I was doing this with pine, I'd be finished by now. We'll glue the ferrule on now to protect the narrow end of the handle as we continue to shape it. Okay, whilst that is drying, I'm going to sort the drill bit out. This is just a small little sander. It's got a metal sanding disc in. Keep sanding until we've got a nice smooth shaft, and as you can see the fluting on the drill gives it a really lovely pattern. It's a question of how much beautifying do you want to make it. If you wanted it, you could polish it up. You could have this really gleaming sort of nice sort of polished sort of steel. Would look quite nice, but it's a tool. As long as it functions, that's the main thing. Back to the handle. First I'll tidy up the end of the glue and level out the join where the handle meets the ferrule. Once the ferrule is nice and tidy, it's time to start finishing the shape of the handle. I certainly wouldn't describe myself as a master on the lathe, I can assure you. There are plenty of turners out there who are absolutely incredible at what they do, but I know what I want, and I've sort of got a good idea on how to get there. And that's all that matters. An interesting thing with awl. A guy called Braille, the guy who invented Braille, when he was a child, his father was a leather worker, and leather workers use awls. He stabbed himself in the eye with an awl and developed an infection which went on into his second eye, which then rendered him blind. But another interesting thing about Braille is that he didn't actually invent Braille. It was a guy called Charles Babbage, who was a French captain in the army of Napoleon. When the orders came down from HQ for the officers to read them, they had to, especially at night, they had to strike up a lantern, which then rendered them exposed to hostile fire, and a lot of them were killed. So Charles Babbage invented Braille, but it was a 12-dot system and very difficult to read. He showed Louis Braille this system, and Louis Braille took it on, whittled it down from 12 dots to 6 dots, and it's been adopted universally from that day on. Very interesting story, but I digress. Next, I'm going to get the copper wire we saw earlier and take 6 strands of it and clamp one end in the vise and tie the other ends to a hook, and then clamp the hook in the drill. Pull it tight and start the drill slowly. The copper wire should now be winding into a sort of copper rope. I'm using a steel rod and running it up and down the spinning wire to try and get it to wrap evenly. It doesn't take long, just a minute or so, and the copper strands are wound into a nice tight copper rope. Now to prepare the handle for the copper rope. I flattened a very narrow edge at the top of the handle, and now I'm going to take a fairly thick piece of copper wire and burn a groove into it. All will become clear soon, or smoky. Next we take a tiny drill bit and drill a hole into the side of the handle, in the groove we've just made. Then insert the end of the copper rope and wrap it round the handle. Then we drill another hole for the other end of the copper wire. It's time to drill the hole where the spike is going to go. And then we can glue the spike into place. Right, so the next thing we need to do is, I want to take this little piece off and just tidy up the end a little bit. Very slow process bringing it down. I don't want to go too mad, I just want to get that little stumpy bit down. I don't want to get too much sandpaper on this because it's quite nice at the moment. This pah-dook is really hard. This is so hard, in fact I'm not making much progress with the sandpaper, so I think it's time for a different plan of attack. Working with pah-dook is not for the impatient. I've got a great idea. Now we're making more progress. Then back to the fine sandpaper to finish it off. Okay, 600. And finally, we're ready for some polish. Well, there we go. All in all, not bad for a first attempt. It just goes to show what you can make with just scrap pieces that are lying around. We had an old drill bit, old masonry drill bit with a broken end, no good. We had an old bit of used copper pipe, and a small scrap of pah-dook found in the waste bin, and a bit of copper wire, which we fabricated into a nice rope. And those are all sort of waste items, really. And it, you know, there you go. It's amazing what you can do, actually. So thank you for watching, and I hope you liked it. And if you'd like to see more, please like and subscribe, and come back to us again soon. Thank you very much. Cheerio.